I had already notified all the guests. The groom had been swapped, but my dear fiancée was still completely clueless. She genuinely thought she could pull a masterclass in deception, getting a marriage certificate with the poor scholarship student and secretly giving him a cozy little home. Little did she know, I had already generously vacated the VIP seat for him. Not only did I mail the wedding rings and my groom's suit straight to Mr. Charity Case, but I also swapped the giant wedding photos at the venue with their spicy little couple selfies. But on the day of the wedding, when she realized the guy standing at the altar wasn't me, she actually had a total meltdown on the spot, flipping the entire city upside down to find a trace of me. Sadly for her, I had already hit the ultimate delete button on my existence in her world. Mr. Vance, so your meaning is, the wedding schedule remains exactly the same, but the groom is going to be replaced by another person. Is that right? Facing the wedding planner's aggressively confused stare, I nodded without a single ounce of hesitation. In half a month, the wedding proceeds as usual. I'll hand over all the replacement materials for the venue to you guys in the next few days. All right, do I need to give Miss Sterling a heads up? No need. I cut him off almost instinctively, my tone dripping with an emotion that was hard to hide. Seeing the planner's slightly terrified expression, I took a breath and explained as calmly as possible. She's quite busy. For all future wedding-related matters, just talk to me and me alone. This wedding was going to be my absolute final grand parting gift to Serafina, and since it's a gift, it naturally has to be unwrapped at the very last second. That way, she'll be thoroughly surprised. Walking out of the wedding planning agency, I stood by the curb, whipped out my phone, and booked a one-way ticket out of Cresthaven. The exact second the booking successful notification popped up, her call came through. I answered the phone. Before I could even breathe a word, her trademark gentle, syrupy voice floated out from the speaker. Vander, Mom and Dad said they missed you. They told me to bring you home for dinner tonight. Oh, and they said they have a little something to give you tonight. Guess what it is? I didn't make a sound. The Sterling family only had one precious daughter, groomed from birth to be the ultimate CEO heir, so her Ice Queen persona had never really changed. Yet, ironically, this very same Serafina had supposedly given all her softness to me alone. Well, at least, that's the bedtime story I used to believe. Our mothers were total besties, so Serafina and I basically grew up together. Sadly, a fairy tale life isn't just handed to you on a silver platter. Less than a month after my mother passed away, my lovely father couldn't wait to roll out the red carpet for that woman. And me? I was conveniently kidnapped, a little plot orchestrated by my shiny new stepmother. I still vividly remember waking up in a dizzy haze reeking of cheap booze with some sketchy guy trying to get handsy with me. I panicked. I grabbed a glass bottle off the floor and introduced it violently to the guy's skull. He twitched a few times and went offline. Immediately, several other lovely gentlemen surrounded me and started using me as a human punching bag. I honestly thought I was about to log out of life for good. It was her. It was Serafina who came kicking the door down with the police like an absolute action movie star. In that moment, backlit by the doorway, I swear she looked like my personal savior. From that day on, she became the sole functioning light bulb in my dark little life. I developed some severe psychological trauma. I was terrified of being touched, terrified of the dark, terrified of people breathing my air. She stayed by my side every single day, dragging me to doctors, sitting through therapy sessions, trying every clown trick in the book just to make me smile. It was her who painstakingly pulled me out of the abyss, inch by inch. Back then, I thought I was being cautious enough, but before officially crowning her as the one, I still tried to confirm one final crucial detail. I asked her, Serafina, I can only accept 100%, unfiltered, unreserved love. If you ever stop loving me, let's just shake hands and part ways peacefully. But if you dare to betray me, I will make sure you never ever find me again. She excitedly raised her fingers to the sky and swore a literal oath to me. Evander Vance, in this lifetime, I, Serafina Sterling, will only ever want you. I promise to love you forever, treat you well. Time will prove every word I say. But now, time had indeed proven everything. She couldn't give me that kind of love. She wanted to keep me on the hook, but she also couldn't bear to drop the side quests. Just last night, while fishing through the pockets of her discarded coat, I pulled out a shiny official marriage certificate belonging to her and Dorian. In that very moment, even my lungs forgot how to work. Dorian. Oh, of course I remembered this guy. The Sterling family had sponsored quite a few poor students over the years, and he was one of them. I didn't remember him because he was some outstanding genius, but because he was a gold medalist at faking innocent intentions. I literally watched him try to hit on Serafina once, only to get mercilessly shot down. Her tone was colder than a freezer. I have a boyfriend. Facing Dorian's cheap little pickup artist tricks, I always felt nothing but disdain. I knew exactly what Serafina thought of him. She was a straight shooter, never beating around the bush. She had coldly rejected him right in front of my face, saying, "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." Back then, my ego did a happy little tap dance over that sentence for a long time. After all, her actively claiming me as her man in front of others was, in my eyes, top-tier validation. I genuinely believed there was absolutely zero probability between her and Dorian. That is, until about a month ago when she suddenly brought him up. She claimed Dorian's mother was on her deathbed, and her dying wish was just to see her precious son in a suit, holding someone's hand and walking into the marriage hall. She said she wanted to do him a solid and help out. She actually asked for my permission. That was the exact millisecond I realized her heart had skipped a beat for him. I rejected it. Absolutely, unconditionally, with zero hesitation. I reminded her word by word, I only accept unreserved love. If you are going to slice a piece of it off for someone else, then we can just cancel our subscription to this relationship right now. Her face went ghost white. She nervously grabbed my hand, swearing up and down she would never betray me. Never ever. I actually believed her. Thinking back now, it's just peak comedy. Not only did she secretly go get hitched with Dorian behind my back, she even gifted him a multi-million-dollar luxury villa. And the most hilarious part? They were already playing house together, getting all tangled up, while I was out here prepping our wedding. We literally had half a month left until the wedding. I stared at the happy couple on her and Dorian's marriage certificate. The serene smile on her face made me physically gag. I was just thankful I found out all of this before the wedding. At least, I still retained a shred of dignity. My phone suddenly rang. It was her calling. Vander, Mom and Dad said they missed you. They told me to bring you home for dinner tonight. Her voice was so disgustingly gentle, acting like absolutely nothing had happened. They said they have a gift to give you tonight. Guess what it is? I didn't answer immediately. From the other end of the line, I could hear some suspicious subtle noises. The rustling of clothes, her slightly breathy pants, all mixed in with another man's low, rumbling voice. I didn't need to guess. I knew exactly what kind of extracurricular activities she was up to, but I didn't pop her bubble. I kept my tone completely flat and replied, I'm not home. I'll head over to the main estate myself later. No need to pick me up. She still tried to maintain her sweet fiancé act. When did you go out? Why didn't you call me to tag along? I went out while you were literally busy in someone else's arms. Talk about a clear division of labor. I stayed silent for a few seconds, forced a completely lifeless smile, and said, I prepared a surprise. I'm planning to give it to you on our wedding day. Just went to the planners to finalize some details. Her emotions on the other end instantly spiked, acting like she was genuinely looking forward to my so-called surprise. What surprise? If I tell you now, it won't be a surprise anymore, will it? You'll find out naturally on the wedding day. After hanging up, I didn't immediately go to the Sterling estate. I went home, accurately speaking, to the 300 square meter place that once belonged to us. This place was decorated brick by Serafina and me. Whether it was the painting by the fireplace she handpicked, or the refracted light tracks I installed by the living room curtains, all the details hid traces of us. I used to think this place would be our forever, but from the moment I saw her and Dorian's marriage certificate last night, I knew all of this had met its end. Serafina had handed me the rings we were supposed to exchange on our wedding day ahead of time. These two couple diamond rings were personally designed by her. I looked at the sketches she drew stroke by stroke. That day, she sat in my lap, explaining the design concept to me like an excited kid. Vander, look, I designed a hidden groove here. When the two rings are put together, it forms a heart shape. We will never ever be separated, okay? Her eyes were sparkling, like she truly believed in the concept of forever. I shook those memories out of my brain, refusing to linger on them. I took out the rings and dialed the local same-city courier. Hello, I'd like to schedule a pickup. I filled in the recipient as Dorian. Since I wasn't going to be the groom, this ring, representing that we would never be separated, naturally should be returned to our newest cast member. I scheduled it to be delivered at exactly 9 a.m. on the day of the wedding. Watching the courier leave, I felt my breathing ease up a bit. But I knew it wasn't enough. This house was littered with her shadow. Before I leave, I will erase her from this place, bit by bit, just like she did to me in her heart. By the time I arrived at the Sterling estate, the corners of my eyes were still slightly red. Seeing my poor complexion, Mrs. Sterling kept looking toward the door and asked me, why do you look so terrible? Did that girl Serafina bully you? I forced a smile, trying hard to stabilize my emotions so I wouldn't crack. No, the wind outside was just too strong, got something in my eye. Saying that, I conveniently rubbed my eyes, wiping away the residual tears. If she dares to bully you, you absolutely must tell me, okay? Mrs. Sterling patted my arm. Serafina is busy, sure, but she can't just ignore you. My heart felt sour, but I could only keep smiling and nodding. I didn't blame Mrs. Sterling. She treated me well. Ever since my mom died, she had always taken care of me like family. It's just, there were some things she didn't know. Not long after, Serafina's car pulled into the underground garage, but she never came up. Mrs. Sterling told me to go get her. I walked down to the garage and immediately spotted her white sedan with the headlights still glaring. She was sitting in the driver's seat, the window rolled down, a slender lady's cigarette pinched between her fingers, unlit. Her gaze was glued to her phone screen. I stopped in my tracks. Before I could even speak, I heard her coy, flirtatious voice. My lower back is still aching, it's all your fault. I felt as if I had been nailed to the floor. Dorian's voice drifted from the phone, a low, gentle chuckle. All right, my bad. Come over to my place tonight, I'll rub it for you. Serafina gave a soft hemph, her tone dripping with sickly sweet coquettishness. You don't just have to rub my back, you have to service me properly, too. She hung up the phone, a lingering smile still on her face. She finally lit that cigarette, took a drag, then leaned back in her seat and exhaled a long breath. That expression was something I had never seen before. Practiced, unrestrained, real. Turns out she had long ceased to be the Serafina I thought I knew. In front of me, she never smoked, never drank, claiming she hated the smell. In front of me, she was docile, clean, practically unblemished by the mortal world. But now, looking at her like this, there was zero concealment, zero pretending. It turns out that when the person I loved stopped loving me, she wouldn't even bother keeping up the disguise. I stood there, my throat feeling like it was filled with lead. I thought her gentleness belonged to me alone. Turns out she could distribute it just as flawlessly to someone else. The sound of her whining playfully still echoed in my ears, but that softness wasn't for me anymore. A bitter smile hooked the corner of my mouth, but my stomach felt like it was being twisted by a wrench, churning violently. The car engine cut off. Serafina tapped her cigarette out. A split second before she pulled the car door open, I turned and walked away from the garage. Almost instantly, her on my heels. We both arrived upstairs. The maids were busy laying out the dishes on the dining table one by one. Seeing us walk in, Mrs. Sterling glared at her with an unkind tone. "What were you dawdling for so long? Making Vander go down just to beg you to come up?" Her expression suddenly froze. As if realizing something, she whipped her head to look at me. "You just went looking for me?" I looked at her, my expression perfectly calm, my tone light and breezy. "I saw you were on a call, so I didn't interrupt. I just came back up." "Why? What's wrong?" Her eyes locked onto mine, not daring to shift away for even a second. I had never seen her look so panicked before. "Did you hear who I was talking to?" I felt an indescribable wave of irony wash over my heart. But on the surface, I didn't let a single flaw slip. "Didn't hear a thing. Wasn't it a client? Who else could it be?" I stared frankly into her eyes, acting so nonchalant it was as if I truly knew nothing. Her expression finally loosened, instantly reverting back to that gentle facade I was so familiar with. She took my hand, her fingertips lightly tracing my palm, her voice soft enough to drip water. "Not a client. It was about the charity gala next week. I had someone custom make couple accessories for us. They were calling from there. By my side, no matter when, you will always be the most dazzling one." Listening to her say this, my brain immediately replayed her phone conversation. "My lower back is still aching. It's all your fault." She lied so naturally, so smoothly, that for a second, I almost believed her. Charity galas. She used to host so many for my sake. The Evander Vance Foundation, blessing donations. She didn't even believe in gods, yet she prayed for me over and over again. I remembered all of that, and I used to be so moved I didn't know what to do. But now, hearing her continue pouring out these sweet nothings, I didn't feel a single emotional ripple. I merely gave a faint hum. "You just handle it however you see fit." After dinner, Mrs. Sterling brought out a box. It was carved from red silkwood, clearly something prepared with great care. This was originally meant to be passed down to the daughter-in-law of the Sterling family. But since your Uncle Sterling and I only have Serafina, this naturally goes to you two. I opened the box. Inside was a pair of concentric jade pendants. The jade was warm, the carving exquisite, worth an absolute fortune. She looked at me with a loving motherly smile. And me? Looking at this gift symbolizing inheritance and marriage, I couldn't muster even half a drop of joy. I forced a twitch of my lips, closed the pendants and placed them back in the box. "This gift is too precious. I understand your intentions, Auntie. It's just, something with such profound meaning should wait until the wedding day to be worn." My attitude wasn't exactly cold, but it was firm enough. Mrs. Sterling had no choice but to nod, saying she would personally put them on us on the wedding day. I noticed Serafina frequently glancing down at her watch, looking like she couldn't wait for this dinner to be over. I took the hint and said my goodbyes. As we walked downstairs, she kept gently rubbing her lower back the whole way, looking somewhat uncomfortable. I shot her a sideways glance, pretending to ask casually, "What's wrong? Back hurting?" Her body visibly stiffened and her hands slowly pulled away. "Occupational hazard," she laughed, pretending to be utterly unbothered. "It's nothing, don't worry about it." I didn't expose her, I just gave a light nod. But a wave of unspeakable self-mockery washed over my heart. After returning home, she naturally urged me to go to bed early. Her tone was as sweet as if nothing had ever happened, as if we were still that intimate couple about to step into the wedding hall. But I knew perfectly well in my heart, she wasn't rushing me to sleep because she cared about my rest. She was afraid that if I stayed awake, I'd delay her little midnight rendezvous. I lay in bed with my eyes closed, but my mind was sharper than ever. She lay beside me, her arm wrapped around my waist. At first, her movements were gentle, as if afraid to startle me. But soon, her breathing grew heavier, and the grip on my waist tightened just a fraction. I knew she was testing me. I didn't move. I purposely slowed my breathing, projecting the perfect illusion of being fast asleep, playing right into her expectations. A few minutes later, just as predicted, Serafina quietly slipped out of bed. The rustling of her changing clothes was faint, but I heard every single thread of it. After dressing, she walked with practiced steps and hurriedly slipped out the door. Only when I heard the soft click of the front door closing did I slowly open my eyes. I got up, walked to the window, pulled back the curtain, and watched her car speed out of the driveway. The night was pitch black, and her taillights were like a piercing red slash, drawing a mocking streak of light across my vision. I stood there, my chest feeling like a boulder was crushing it, suffocating me. The next second, I raised my fist and slammed it viciously into the wall next to the window. It hurt, yeah, but I knew this bit of physical pain was nowhere near the raging fire burning inside my heart. Waking up the next morning, as soon as I sat up, my nose caught the aroma wafting from the kitchen. The living room was empty, but a familiar figure was bustling about in the kitchen. It was Serafina. She was back. I instinctively clenched my fists but walked out of the bedroom as calmly as possible. Hearing the noise, she turned and smiled at me. That smile, it looked like a picture of domestic bliss and endless affection. I learned a new recipe. She scooped the soup into a bowl, her eyes curving into crescents. Come try it. Your stomach has always been bad. I heard this is great for digestion. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at her. After a long while, I slowly sat down, my gaze fixed on her. It was a scene so familiar I could practically recite it, yet I felt like I was looking at a complete stranger. Where did you go last night? I asked. Her movements halted. The smile on her face froze for a fraction of a second. Her eyes darted away instantly. I saw her blink in a panic, but very quickly, she adjusted her mask, walked over and sat down next to me. She held my hand, her eyes looking so worried you'd think I was the one who made a mistake. There was a sudden emergency at the company last night. I saw you were asleep, so I didn't wake you. What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? Her voice was so light, so soft, as if she was terrified I had relapsed into my old trauma. I didn't speak, I just kept staring at her. She was still there, looking incredibly heartbroken, trying to comfort me. She even picked up her phone to call her assistant to arrange for my medication, and booked a follow-up psychology appointment. This whole routine was too familiar. I once thought she was the only light in my dark nights. Back then, when I had to rely on meds just to sleep, she would guard me. Sometimes she'd sleep on the floor next to the bed, just so she could hold my hand the second I had a nightmare. I really truly believed in her. But as her hand held mine so tenderly right now, I suddenly spotted the faint, purplish bruise peeking out from her collar. She was dressed more conservatively than usual, even wrapping her neck up tightly. But the sleeves she rolled up to cook had betrayed her. A highly suggestive hickey trailed along the inside of her arm. In an instant, I understood exactly where she had been last night. She gave her body to another man, yet she could still come back in the morning, gently simmer soup for me, comfort my insomnia, and manage my life. She could even spin lies flawlessly, acting like absolutely nothing had happened. Have some soup. She pushed that sickeningly sweet stomach-nourishing soup in front of me. Looking at those eyes full of fake concern, and then looking at that bowl of soup, my stomach violently churned. That smell almost suffocated me. I forcefully shoved her hand away. The chair let out a harsh screech against the floor. I rushed into the bathroom. What was bubbling up in my throat wasn't just nausea, it was anger, humiliation, and bitterness. Serafina followed me, looking totally distraught. I had just walked out of the bathroom, my expression grim. Seeing my pale face, she quickly reached out to wipe the water droplets from the corner of my mouth, but the moment her hand touched me, my reflex was to push her away roughly. Don't touch me. Her hand hovered in midair, stiff. Her eyes couldn't hide her shock and confusion. Vander, her voice dropped. Did I do something wrong? I closed my eyes, suppressed my emotions, forced myself to calm down, and said in a low voice, "No, I just read a novel. I might have projected the character onto you." She breathed a sigh of relief, stepped closer, and while wiping my face, she chuckled playfully. "Since when did you start liking novels? What was it about?" I stared directly into her eyes and said in an even tone, "A couple that everyone envied. The female lead couldn't withstand the test of time, had a change of heart, and betrayed the male lead. She didn't want to give up her current relationship, but couldn't bear to let go of the fresh thrill either. In the end, she lost everything. Serafina, tell me, in the future, will you turn out like that too?" She froze for a second. Her fingers trembled slightly. Then, she hugged me. Burying her head in my chest, her voice muffled. "Novels are all fake. No one can tear us apart, and I will never change my heart to love someone else. Vander, you have to believe in my love for you." I said nothing. Her voice was absolutely resolute, but I couldn't tell if she said it to reassure me or to convince herself. For the next few days, she practically stuck to me like glue, not leaving my side for a second. She even insisted on personally taking me to the hospital for my checkups. She became gentle and cautious, like we had traveled back to the early days of our relationship. She concealed all her emotions perfectly. Time flew by, and soon it was the day of the charity gala. Serafina dragged me along to get a custom suit fitted. I was completely disinterested. While sitting on the side flipping through the catalog, my eyes landed on an ink-black suit. Clean, sharp. It had a quiet, piercing vibe to it. It was exactly the kind of person I wanted to be. She noticed my pause and asked gently, "Do you like this one? Go try it on. If it fits, I'll have them deliver it straight to the house." Just as I was about to say, "It's fine," the sales assistant stepped forward, looking incredibly awkward. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Vance. This piece has already been reserved by someone else. If you don't mind, I can recommend some other styles." Serafina frowned, her gaze turning cold, her tone shifting instantly. "Go ask the buyer if they're willing to give it up. I can give him a brand new design for free." The assistant glanced at me, leaned in close to her ear, and whispered something. Even though the voice was low, I heard it perfectly clear. "It was reserved by Mr. Dorian." I looked at Serafina. The expression on her face was so wonderfully subtle it made me want to laugh. Before she could open her mouth, I spoke first. "It's just a piece of clothing. You want me to fight him for it?" She froze. "The style isn't bad, I just looked at it for a second," I said flatly. "Whether it's people or objects, I don't like stealing what belongs to someone else." She looked as if she had been stabbed by those words. Her brows furrowed involuntarily, and her gaze darted around guiltily. I ignored her, turned around, randomly picked a navy blue suit, and handed it to the assistant. She stayed silent for a few seconds before following me. In the fitting room, as I took off my jacket, my phone screen lit up. Countdown. 7 days. Staring at the countdown notification popping up on my screen, Serafina subconsciously frowned. She reached out, wanting to look at it, but before she could touch the screen, I stepped out of the fitting room. The moment the curtain was pulled back, she stopped dead in her tracks, looking as if she had just been struck by a revelation. Wearing that navy blue suit standing in front of her, her eyes instantly lit up, staring at me unblinking like she was seeing me for the very first time. "Vander, you look incredibly handsome in this color." Her eyes were filled with undisguised surprise and affection. In the past, a single look like this from her would send my heartbeat into overdrive, making me float on clouds for the rest of the day. But now, I felt nothing but a pool of stagnant water. I shifted my gaze, completely ignoring her compliment, turned around and grabbed my phone, ready to leave. She stood on her tiptoes, trying to kiss me. I tilted my head, perfectly dodging her advance, and smoothly dropped a nonchalant sentence. "Let's go. We're running out of time." She was stunned. Watching my motion of pocketing the phone reminded her of the notification, and her voice dropped a notch. "I just saw the countdown on your phone. 7 days left. What is that?" I paused slightly, a tiny ripple forming in my heart. But on the surface, I remained perfectly composed. 7 days from now was the wedding. It was also the exact moment I planned to completely vanish. I didn't want her to know right now, because the surprise she would see at the end of this wedding wouldn't be a gift, but the ugly truth. I looked up at her calmly, my tone so steady it was flawless. 7 days from now is our wedding. Did you forget?" Her eyes flickered. She looked a bit guilty, yet also like she was trying to hide something, but she didn't press the issue. We arrived at the gala venue together. Even before it officially started, the hall was buzzing with noise. Many people saw us walk in and immediately swarmed over. Serafina glanced back at me, softening her voice. "Vander, if you don't like the noise, I'll take you somewhere quieter." I didn't respond, just followed her forward. The people around us took turns coming up to toast, say hello, and exchange pleasantries. It was all the same old drivel. How perfect we looked together, how good she was to me. "Miss Sterling is so devoted to Mr. Vance. You couldn't find a second power couple like this in all of Cresthaven. Miss Sterling is so incredibly loyal in love. Who wouldn't envy Mr. Vance for marrying a woman like this? When your wedding day comes, I will definitely bring a massive gift, wishing you a century of harmony in advance." Standing in the center of the crowd, listening to these words, I felt suffocated. But Serafina was eating it up. The smile on her face was soft and natural, blooming from the bottom of her heart. I knew she enjoyed this feeling of being put on a pedestal, just like she enjoyed the security of having everything under her control. Her smile was beautiful. I used to stare at it in a daze, but now I only felt the burning irony. It seemed these people had finally found a surefire way to cozy up to Serafina. The flattery rolled off their tongues smoother and louder with every passing second, as if saying a few extra nice things in front of her would earn them a slice of the pie. But all I heard was a deafening buzz. Those blessings and praises sounded worse than sheer mockery to my ears. Irritation bubbled up inside me bit by bit. I didn't even know how much longer I could tolerate this. Serafina noticed my mood and actively shooed away the crowd of sycophants, leading me to a relatively quiet spot in the corner. But this peace didn't last long. That familiar, nauseating figure appeared right in front of me, Dorian. He was wearing that ink-black suit, looking smug, his pace unhurried, as if he were the main character of this entire gala. "Miss Sterling, Mr. Vance, long time no see." When he said this, there was a polite little smirk plastered on his face. But I knew exactly what was hiding underneath that smile. The charity gala was hosted by the Sterling family. As a prime example of the poor students they had sponsored, he naturally had the right to be here. Not to mention, he was scheduled to give a speech later. He was currently riding high. I couldn't be bothered to entertain him. I didn't even look up, just kept my head down looking at my phone, treating him like oxygen. But he took a step forward, his tone a mix of fake sincerity and smugness. "Is Mr. Vance still mad at me? What I did last time was definitely wrong. I apologize. I was just desperate back then, thinking maybe I could get Miss Sterling to fake marry me for a bit. But Miss Sterling already rejected me. Besides, I have a girlfriend now anyway, so let's just wipe the slate clean, yeah?" This whole speech of his was delivered so casually, as if the humiliation I endured was completely trivial. He called it an apology, but every single word was a flex, jabbing into my chest like a laughing dagger. Serafina also caught the boastful undertone in his words. She frowned, her voice dropping a few degrees. "Remember your place. Vander doesn't like you. Do yourself a favor and stay away from us." Dorian gave a cold snort, acting as if he couldn't care less about her shooing him away. "It's fine if he doesn't like me. As long as the person I like likes me back, that's enough." As he said this, his eyes stared lecherously right at Serafina, even deliberately winking at her. In that split second, I saw Serafina's eyes waver in panic. She raised her hand, grabbed a glass of wine from the table, and downed it in one gulp. I didn't want to watch this circus anymore. Right in front of my face, they were making eyes at each other, like I was literally invisible. I stood up, my face freezing over, and turned to walk toward the restroom. Behind me was the sound of Serafina scrambling up, seemingly trying to chase after me. But before she could take a few steps, she was intercepted. A crowd surrounded Dorian, acting like they had discovered a new continent, aggressively showering him with compliments. "Mr. Dorian, this suit is incredibly handsome. And those earrings, what great taste!" Dorian tilted his chin up, looking obnoxiously proud. "Of course! My girlfriend bought them for me. Only the best of the best. These earrings, why does the jade look so similar to the rings Mr. Vance wears? Could it be that your girlfriend and Miss Sterling bought from the same block of jade? I was mid-stride, but my footsteps abruptly stopped. I looked down at the jade ring on my ring finger. That was the couple ring Serafina had personally designed for me. She had said this ring contained a hidden half-heart. When you put the two rings together, it formed a complete heart. She had also said this symbolized that we would never be separated. I believed it then, treating that promise like my religion. But now, it was just a glaring reminder that I was nothing but a joke. I slowly took the ring off and clenched it tightly in my fist. The smooth jade dug deep into my palm, stinging until it went numb. Barely 2 minutes after I ducked into the restroom, I heard a familiar ringtone echo from outside. It rang only once before being swiftly answered. Then, I heard Serafina, loud and clear, lower her voice and whisper, "Wait for me in the little garden." Next came the click-clack of her heels against the floor, fading away into the distance. I closed my eyes, a cold sneer tugging at my lips. She had never changed. Her actions were always faster than her words. I knew the layout of this venue better than anyone. Where the little garden was, how to take the most covert detour. I knew it all. I didn't walk through the main entrance. Instead, I pushed open the storage room at the end of the hall. There was a floor-to-ceiling window there. It couldn't be opened, but the gap in the blinds was wide enough for me to see everything outside clearly. Just as I expected, she soon appeared in my line of sight. Rushed footsteps, a face full of anticipation, and Dorian, waiting there like an impatient puppet, pulled her into his arms the second he saw her. She didn't resist in the slightest. Instead, it looked like she had returned to her favorite place in the world. She wrapped her arms around his waist, holding him so tight, as if she wished she could fuse into his bones. My hand resting against the window trembled slightly. Then, I heard her softly whining, teasing him. When I went to the hospital for a checkup last time, the doctor literally said my stamina is drained to the negatives. I almost laughed. Drained stamina, right. That day she stayed out all night. I always thought she was entertaining clients or working late. Turns out, she was getting drained. So that night when she came back to the Sterling estate covered in suspicious mosquito bites, she casually brushed it off as my back is a little sore. She even dressed more conservatively, and now, the wonderful truth had paraded itself right in front of my eyeballs in all its HD glory. Dorian pinched her chin, forcing her to look up at him. Without a shred of hesitation, she stood on her tiptoes and initiated a passionate kiss. The two of them stuck together like glue, totally entangled. The sound of their intense lip wrestling was exceptionally grating in this quiet night. I don't even remember what expression was on my face. Maybe I was numb. Maybe I was cold. Maybe I was so furious my blood had actually started to freeze. I saw Dorian bite her lip. She frowned but didn't push him away. It wasn't until a bit of blood seeped out that she finally yanked him off, scolding him with a furrowed brow. "Are you asking for a death wish? Didn't I tell you not to leave marks in obvious places? Vander will be upset if he sees." Wow, I really should thank her for being so considerate of my feelings. Dorian laughed, completely unafraid of her. His hand slid down her waist, giving her a provocative squeeze. "Just make up some random excuse to brush it off. He won't suspect a thing. I just love how you look right now. Come to my place again tonight. I've prepared some new tricks for you." He lowered his head and whispered something in her ear. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes heating up. The very next second, she grabbed his collar and pulled him in for another kiss. I just stood there, staring through this tiny gap, watching my future bride engaged in a hardcore tonsil hockey session with another man. She kept claiming she only loved me. She held me, vowing she'd only ever marry me in this lifetime. She'd knelt down to design those rings, promising never to leave my side. But she turned right around and gave the other half of that heart to someone else. I leaned against the window, my fingers gripping so hard my knuckles turned white, trembling from the tension. My stomach felt like it was doing backflips. I almost couldn't stand straight. By the time I walked out of the storage room, Serafina had already separated from Dorian and was frantically searching for me, acting as if nothing had ever happened. Spotting me, she immediately ran over, a fine layer of sweat on her forehead. "Where did you go? I couldn't find you when I turned around. It scared me to death." She really was an Oscar-worthy actress. I looked at her, my gaze deliberately landing on the corner of her lips. The spot where he bit her was still red. The blood hadn't even been fully wiped away. "I went for a walk in the garden, getting some fresh air," I said flatly. "Why is your lip busted?" Hearing me ask, "Why is your lip busted?" she froze. What followed was sheer panic. A layer of dense cold sweat broke out on her forehead. I stared at her reaction without saying a word, wanting to see what kind of garbage excuse she would spin this time. "Which garden did you go to?" I curled my lips into a mocking arc, deliberately turning away and acting nonchalant. "Just the one in the back. Lots of people there. Why are you so nervous? Can't I even take a walk?" Her shoulders visibly relaxed, as if she had just returned from the gates of hell. "It's nothing. Just afraid you got lost," she said, her eyes darting around shiftily, still trying to cover it up as always. I didn't respond, instead turning my head toward the main stage of the gala. That absolute dog, Dorian, was standing right under the spotlight, giving a tear-jerking speech about how the Sterling family sponsored him, how heavy their grace was. He brought up Serafina's name over and over again. With every sentence, his eyes flicked toward our direction. I could practically guess what his next line would be. and beside me, Serafina's gaze bypassed the crowd, staring at him on stage, her expression hiding a complex mess of emotions. I saw her purse her lips as if reminiscing about something, but the movement tugged at the wound on her lip, making her frown slightly. Oh, I remember exactly how that wound got there. He bit her. Yet she still hadn't figured out how to explain it to me. I recalled my unanswered question. I've been a bit stressed lately, got a blister on my lip, accidentally bumped it and it broke. What a clumsy lie. I gave a cold laugh, too tired to even bother exposing her. I'm tired. Going back first. With that, I turned around, too lazy to look at the panic painted on her face. I heard her hurriedly chase after me, grabbing my wrist with much more force than before. Wait for me. Let me just tell Mom and Dad. I'll go back with you. Ultimately, she dragged me to the Sterling estate. Her excuse was that her mom wanted us to stay over for a night, calling it our final reunion before the wedding. I didn't decline. I just washed up and lay down, feeling like I had plummeted into a deep, dark well. Even though my mind and body were completely exhausted, my sleep was restless. I leaned against the pillows, eyes half closed, listening to her tapping away on her phone screen beside me, and the sound of her soft giggles, that kind of suppressed flirtatious laugh that only lovers share. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself not to picture what kind of text she was sending, who she was laughing with, what kind of games they were playing. I don't know how long passed, but she gently patted me awake, placed a soft kiss on my cheek, and whispered, Vander, Mom has something she wants to discuss with me. I'll be gone for a bit. Call me when you wake up. I grunted and rolled over and pretended to fall back into a deep sleep. The soft click of the door, the sound of footsteps fading away. I waited a moment, then sat up. I heard their footsteps heading toward the study. I stood up, walked barefoot to the door, and stealthily crept over to the study. The door wasn't fully closed. A sliver of light spilled through the crack. Then, I heard Mrs. Sterling's voice, suppressing her fury. How many times have I told you? Evander is a good kid. Since you're already with him, clean up the messy boys around you. That Dorian guy, why are you still tangled up with him? Do you have any idea that everyone in our circle is laughing at you right now? I froze at the door, forgetting how to breathe. She was right. It turns out, they knew all along. They all knew about Serafina and Dorian. Not only did she know, but Mrs. Sterling knew too. Not only did Mrs. Sterling know, everyone in their high society circle knew. I was the only clown left in the circus who was completely kept in the dark, stupidly guarding this so-called loyalty and devotion. When those people told us, wishing you happiness and you guys are a match made in heaven, were their mouths secretly twitching with mockery. I stood against the wall, my fingertips ice cold. Mrs. Sterling's lecture in the study continued, but I couldn't hear it anymore. My ears were ringing, like someone was holding my head underwater. I couldn't catch my breath. I mechanically turned around and stumbled back to the bedroom. The moment I lay down, I curled myself up under the blankets. Only one thought tumbled around in my brain. So, it turns out a genuine heart can be faked. Makes sense. After returning to the bedroom, my soul felt like it had been sucked out. My mental state was extremely fragile. Not long after lying down, I fell into a groggy, uneasy sleep. In my dream state, I vaguely felt Serafina return. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at me for a long time. Her gaze landed on me, just as burning and intense as when I used to watch her sleep. Unfortunately, the thing hiding behind that intensity was no longer pure love. Her phone buzzed several times. At first, she didn't move, but the ringing grew frantic, like needles piercing my nerves. Finally, she got up. She hesitated by the bed for a few seconds before turning and leaving. I didn't open my eyes, I didn't ask questions, I just knew, clearer than ever before, exactly who she was going to see. When I woke up the next morning, she hadn't returned. At the dining table, Mrs. Sterling personally slid my breakfast in front of me, a loving and considerate smile plastered on her face. Serafina said there was an emergency at the company, so she rushed back early. If you're free, just stay and play a game of chess with your uncle today. Don't coop yourself up alone. Her tone was so natural, her expression flawless. If I hadn't overheard her conversation with Serafina last night, I would have almost believed her display of care once again. This Mrs. Sterling, who used to treat me like her own flesh and blood. Now in my eyes, she was no different from Serafina. I gave a self-deprecating smile, maintaining my usual gentle and composed demeanor in front of her. There are still some wedding details I need to confirm with the planners. We've been preparing for so long, we can't afford any mistakes. I'll play chess with Uncle next time. Mrs. Sterling nodded, not stopping me. I knew exactly what she was thinking. After breakfast, I didn't delay and drove straight to the wedding planning agency. I wasn't lying. I did have business today. Last week, I told them to swap the groom from me to Dorian and promised to supply all the necessary media materials for the replacement. These past few days, Serafina had basically been glued to my side 24/7. But she forgot one thing. She had carved me into her life a long time ago. Her phone password, her laptop password, they were all my birthday. She thought I wouldn't dare snoop. She thought I trusted her too much. But during the 15 minutes she was taking a shower, I turned all her secrets completely inside out. Her and Dorian's marriage certificate, their honeymoon photos, their spicy selfies, and pictures of them hugging tightly while wearing couple wedding outfits. Not a single thing was missing. Her so-called business trips were actually her spending a full 2-week honeymoon with him abroad. And now, all those photos were sitting pretty in my phone's gallery, and I was sending them to the planners one by one to replace my original role. Once everything was finalized, I surprisingly didn't feel as awful as I expected. Leaving the agency, I suddenly remembered I had done a physical checkup a while back. The report should be ready, so I swung by the hospital. Just as I parked my car, I saw her car at the hospital entrance too. My heart gave a little jolt. I walked inside. Before I even reached the report collection desk, I spotted her at the end of the hallway, right outside the obstetrics and gynecology department. Serafina and Dorian, the two were standing together, talking and laughing. His hand was supporting her lower back, his movement so gentle, as if terrified of hurting her. I stood frozen, my throat suddenly feeling impossibly dry. She had that familiar smile on her face, her eyes practically overflowing with love. Dorian leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Her smile grew even sweeter. So this was her true self. When she saw me, her entire body went rigid. She frantically yanked her hand away from Dorian, cold sweat instantly popping on her forehead. "Vander, what are you doing here?" I looked at her, my voice terrifyingly low. Picking up my medical report, I deliberately avoided looking at her, fixing my gaze entirely on Dorian's pretentious fake face. Serafina practically sprinted over. Tugging at my arm, she babbled a panicked explanation. I got into a minor car accident on the way out today. Dorian just happened to pass by and brought me to the hospital. She paused, her eyes flashing wildly. Then, she dropped a sentence that nearly suffocated me on the spot. "I just finished the checkup. I'm pregnant. Vander, are you happy?" I almost laughed out loud. What a spectacular car crash. One little fender bender and poof, a baby pops out. How could I not be happy? I looked at her, my response soft, my tone so gentle it was practically alien. Dorian shot me a relaxed look, his gaze so soft it was as if he were admiring a priceless treasure. But I knew that look was entirely meant for Serafina. "Mr. Vance got here a bit late, so perhaps you haven't heard the news," Dorian said smoothly. "Miss Sterling is pregnant with twins. It's already been over 2 months. He spoke at a leisurely pace, as if deliberately reading out a despair-inducing death sentence. All I felt inside was absolute absurdity. The doctor suddenly chased after us from behind. Noticing the sparks practically flying between Dorian and me, the doctor couldn't figure out who was who, so he just issued a clinical reminder. The pregnancy is still in its early stages. It's not suitable to be having intercourse right now. Wait until after the 3-month mark and proceed with caution. Which one of you two is her husband? Make sure to pay close attention when you get home. The patient has mild bleeding symptoms. She needs to be very careful these days." The word husband rang exceptionally harsh in my ears. Serafina's entire face turned ghostly white in a millisecond. Sweat rolled down her temples. Her hands were visibly shaking as she dragged me out of the hospital as fast as she could. I didn't shake her off. I didn't speak. Like a marionette on strings, I let her pull me out of the building, medical report in hand. When we finally found a quiet spot, she let out a huge sigh of relief. Acting as if everything was perfectly fine, she smiled and said, "Maybe I've just been too tired lately, caused a little bleeding. Don't worry, Vander. I'll be super careful from now on." I twitched the corners of my mouth, wanting to laugh, but nothing came out. She knew exactly why she was bleeding. I knew too, but I was too lazy to expose her. I had told her before, if she betrays me, I will vanish from her life forever. I intend to keep that promise. Plus, I prepared a very special wedding gift for her. She definitely won't forget it. On the drive back, her phone screen kept flashing non-stop. She shot me a glance, and when I turned my head, she quickly tapped it open. It was a text from Dorian. "Sarah, what should we name our babies? Come over to my place later, we can pick names together, okay?" Her face stiffened, and she aggressively typed back. "We'll talk about names later. Stop saying ambiguous things in front of Evander. If he finds out the baby isn't his, you won't want to know the consequences." Seeing this message out of the corner of my eye, I felt no rage, only mockery. She loved the baby. I knew that. I just didn't expect the baby she was carrying was someone else's. Just then, my own phone lit up. Dorian sent a friend request. I initially didn't want to bother with him, but after a second of hesitation, I hit accept. Less than 2 seconds later, his message came flying in. "Evander Vance, I refuse to believe you're actually this oblivious. The baby Serafina is carrying is not yours." Very direct, but I already knew. I didn't reply. He probably got impatient and sent a barrage of texts. "She and I got a marriage certificate. Here's the picture." It was the exact same certificate I had already seen in Serafina's phone. Looking at it now elicited absolutely zero emotion. "So what if you guys hold a wedding? I am her actual husband. As long as I don't agree to a divorce, you will always be a step below me. She makes time to be with me every day. She's incredibly passionate in bed. Are you just not man enough? She told a lot of people about me. You think those people are envying you? They're just watching a comedy show. Remember the suit I wore to the charity gala? She custom made it for me. You can't even imagine how much she likes me. If it weren't for you two being childhood friends, you wouldn't even have the right to stand next to her." He even spammed me with intimate photos of him and Serafina. Picture after picture, like he was declaring war on me. I just found it hilarious. This guy actually thought I'd be like him, confusing petty triumph with actual love. Right at that moment, Serafina leaned over, smiling as she asked, "What are you looking at so seriously?" I calmly locked my screen, shook my head, and said nothing. She couldn't sense the icy detachment beneath my facade. She just kept linking her arm with mine. The tighter she held on, the more I wanted to run. But I didn't push her away. I just pretended to close my eyes and nap. At least in her eyes, I hadn't discovered a single thing. Good. This way, the wedding day will be spectacularly dramatic. For the next few days, she was gone day and night, claiming urgent company business. I didn't ask. And Dorian, like a desperately impatient clown, constantly sent me updates on her whereabouts and photos. Her accompanying him to maternity stores, buying things for the twins, picking out names for the unborn kids. In the photos, she smiled with soft, genuine tenderness. He lay on her stomach, posing like the perfect soon-to-be dad. Evander Vance, she's been here with me all these days. Did you really think she was pulling overtime at the office? Tell me, will she run away on the wedding day? She's going to be the mother of my children after all. When the time comes, she won't be walking toward you, she'll be walking toward me. He kept trying to poke my sore spots, but I never replied again, because on the day of the wedding, someone truly will be running away. But that person won't be Serafina, it will be me. With Serafina gone these past few days, it ironically became my most relaxed period. Alone, I cleared out everything that belonged to me, piece by piece. I packed it all up and moved it to a small apartment I had prepared in advance. A place nobody knew about, a place that truly belonged to me. This 300-plus square meter house, which used to be stuffed with 5 years of our memories, was now mostly empty. Even the echoes were clearer. The night before the wedding, I was packing the final box of stuff. I didn't expect her to come back. She stood at the door holding a photograph in her hand, her habitual smile plastered on her face. She scanned the half-empty living room and clearly paused. "You've made the house look like you're moving out," she said. "Why did you get yourself all dusty and disheveled?" I paused, casually wiped a smudge of dust off my face, and kept my tone normal. "Clearing out some junk. After the wedding, we'll buy new stuff." She obviously misunderstood my meaning. She thought I was prepping for our married life. She didn't realize I was prepping for a permanent exit. She walked closer and handed me the photo. "I found someone to restore this. It's our first photo together after we started dating. You remember, right?" Of course I remembered. That year, the pear blossoms had just bloomed. I agreed to be with her, and she dragged me to a photo studio for this picture. In the photo, I was smiling like a boy who had just been kissed by spring, and she was looking up at me, stars in her eyes. Except the original copy of this photo was destroyed a long time ago, torn to shreds by Dorian's dog. He had laughed and brought it up in front of me, saying Serafina wasn't even mad. She just smiled, patted the dog's head, and said, "It's fine. It was about time to replace that photo anyway." I pretended I didn't hear it, but I carved every single word into my brain. Now she was bringing back this restored version, acting as if it were a peace offering to fix our relationship. Too bad, photos can be restored, feelings can't. I stared at the photo for a moment, then suddenly spoke. "I kind of want to eat the noodles you make." She froze, her eyes lighting up. "You want my braised beef knife-cut noodles?" I nodded. "Let's have dinner together." This was actually my most pathetic memory. Back when I was rescued from the kidnapping, I was starving. I hunched over the bowl like a feral dog, devouring the noodles. She sat across from me, watching me eat 3 bowls without saying a word. Starting the very next day, she secretly went to a small diner and learned how to make it for a whole month, just so I could taste that flavor again. That was the first time I had the illusion of being deeply loved. Perhaps, this single bowl of noodles would be the perfect period to put an end to this twisted relationship. She agreed without hesitation, smiling like a child who finally got a response, however. Just as the 2 steaming bowls of noodles hit the table, her phone rang. I knew exactly who it was. Her expression shifted from relaxed to rigid. After hanging up, she looked at me, her eyes brimming with conflict and guilt. "Vander, there's an emergency at the company." I looked up, gave her a glance. I didn't call out her lie, I didn't expose her. I just smiled, looking down and stirring the noodles in my bowl. "It's fine. Company matters are more important. Go ahead. We have plenty of time, in the future." She was stunned for a second, seemingly fooled by my calm tone. She walked over and gave me a gentle hug. "Thank you for understanding, Vander. I might be busy until really late tonight. You don't have to wait up for me. I'm so looking forward to our wedding tomorrow." When she said this, her arms were wrapped around me, her eyes hiding an uncontainable sense of happiness. I buried my face in her shoulder, my voice muffled. "I'm looking forward to it too. Looking forward to seeing her face when she realizes the groom has been swapped. In that moment, she will be so surprised." Not long after she left, my phone buzzed. It was Dorian. "Evander Vance, the night before your wedding. She's here keeping me company. What right do you have to compete with me? Do you seriously think you can win?" He acted like a victorious conqueror, continuously firing grating words my way. I didn't reply. I just locked the screen and looked at the bowl of noodles on the table. It looked and smelled perfect, but I had zero appetite. Turns out, not only do feelings change, but even a person's habits and tastes can shift so easily. I picked up the restored photo she brought back last night. With a forceful tear, I ripped it right down the middle, separating the us, leaving only her smiling half face. This is the only true outcome. I went to the bathroom, drew a hot bath, and let myself completely quiet down. Shortly after, I fell into a deep sleep. It was the best night's sleep I had had in years. I woke up right on time before 7 a.m. the next day. 2 notifications lit up my phone screen. A reminder of my train departure time, and an update on the courier tracking, in transit. That was the diamond ring I handed to the courier yesterday. This pair of couple rings would very soon be delivered straight into the hands of the groom, Dorian, right at the wedding venue. My mood was surprisingly peaceful. I packed my last bit of luggage, leaving this place entirely behind me. Without looking back, I walked away. This 300-plus square meter house used to be my home, but now it was nothing but the empty shell of a massive scam. At the exact same time Serafina woke up in Dorian's bed, I didn't even have to guess. She would hurriedly rush back, a blissful smile still clinging to her lips. She would send me a text, "Vander, I literally cannot wait to see you right now." And I would reply, "Me too. I hope when the wedding starts, you will love the surprise I prepared for you." The wedding venue, packed with guests. Serafina stood on the stage, her face glowing with happiness as she narrated the story of our childhood romance and unwavering companionship. She smiled, her eyes brimming with love. The romantic music swelled, balloons floated into the air. The groom walked toward her under the spotlight of 1,000 gazes. "Vander, I am willing to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. I will forever cherish you, love you. Are you willing to spend a lifetime by my side?" Everyone held their breath in anticipation. The groom nodded heavily. In the dim lighting, she finally saw clearly. The man walking up to her wasn't me. In that split second, her smile froze on her face. Even from a distance, I could practically picture her body trembling, consumed by sheer panic, while I, on the other hand, was already on a train heading to another city, watching it all unfold with cold detachment. This wedding was my final gift to her. "Serafina, your highly anticipated surprise has arrived." Serafina's expression morphed from shock to absolute fury. She grabbed Dorian's wrist, gritting her teeth as she interrogated him. "Why is it you? Where is Vander?" Dorian cried out in pain, trying to pull his hand back, acting utterly confused. "Sarah, what are you talking about? We already got our marriage certificate. I was supposed to be the groom all along. Everyone is watching. Stop making a scene." But Serafina acted as if she hadn't heard his deliberate reminder. Her eyes were glued to the wedding ring on Dorian's ring finger. The wedding ring that originally belonged to Evander Vance was now snugly sitting on Dorian's hand. Evander's hands were much slimmer. Wearing his ring, Dorian's finger had already turned red and swollen from the tight squeeze in just this short amount of time. Serafina gripped Dorian's hand and forcefully yanked the ring off his finger. The guests attending this wedding were all the elites and big shots of Cresthaven. Seeing this spectacle, whispers erupted across the hall. Receiving a signaled glance from Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling stood up and hurried to Serafina's side. "Serafina, calm down first. Whatever is going on, wait until the wedding is over." Everyone was trying to urge her to calm down, but Serafina felt like she was about to go insane. Her heart was pounding so hard her body couldn't stop shivering. Then, she finally noticed the massive screen behind her. It wasn't rolling photos of her and Evander's wedding shoot. It was photos of her and Dorian. This set of photos was taken when Dorian relentlessly badgered her into it after she agreed to get the marriage certificate. As photo after photo flashed by, the last text Evander sent her suddenly struck her mind like lightning. "I hope when the wedding starts, you will love the surprise I prepared for you." Serafina's heart gave a violent lurch. The taut string holding her sanity together snapped completely. Evander's words perfectly overlapped with the scene playing out right now. She finally understood what Evander's surprise was. Dorian leaned in close, carefully holding her hand, his tone oozing with pathetic flattery. "Sarah, Evander Vance ran away from the wedding. But you still have me and our babies. Let's just finish the ceremony first." Serafina's tightly wound emotions utterly collapsed at this moment. She roared, shutting down whatever garbage Dorian was about to spew. The next second, a resounding slap landed squarely on Dorian's face. The sheer force of the slap made Dorian's vision blur. In an instant, a swollen red handprint puffed up on his cheek. "What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Vander and I love each other so much. Why would he run away for no reason? Did you say something to him? And who the hell do you think you are? This is my wedding with Vander. Even if he didn't show up, you have zero right to stand here." Dorian's ears were ringing. He couldn't even make out what Serafina was screaming. Serafina's slap packed a monstrous amount of strength. Dorian's vision swam, and he stumbled backward, plummeting off the nearly 1-meter-high stage. As he hit the ground, the impact fractured his shin, and he screamed in agony. "My leg!" The wedding venue dissolved into total chaos, but Serafina had zero bandwidth to care about any of this. She was being tortured to the brink of insanity by the thoughts spiraling in her head. Dorian said Evander ran away. She refused to believe it. Amidst the chaos, she turned her back on everyone, bolted out of the venue, and drove like a maniac back to their house. "Vander, you must be joking with me, right? You're definitely waiting for me at home. How could the groom be someone else?" What was normally an hour-long drive, Serafina demolished in 30 minutes. But when she threw open the front door, she only saw a hollow, empty apartment. Besides the furniture, there was absolutely nothing. Serafina rushed in, tearing through every single room, flipping over every corner. Unfortunately, not a single trace of Evander Vance could be found. "Vander, stop joking around with me, okay? We still have a wedding to finish." Serafina screamed Evander's name over and over again. With every unanswered shout, the hope in her heart bled out a little more until it completely evaporated. She finally noticed that every single item belonging to Evander in this house was gone. Their couple items, the framed photos on the walls, the anniversary gifts they exchanged, every little piece of evidence proving that Evander Vance once existed in this space, had vanished into thin air. Even though she had vaguely sensed something was off when she returned last night, she hadn't paid enough attention. On the dining table in the living room, the 2 bowls of noodles she had personally cooked last night were still sitting there, untouched. That first official photo of her and Evander was tossed casually onto the table. The photo had long been torn straight down the middle. In the picture, only Serafina was left. Serafina felt her own heart mirroring that torn photograph, brutally ripped apart, dripping with blood. In this moment, Serafina finally grasped the reality. Evander Vance had truly left her. But why? Serafina racked her brain but couldn't think of a single reason why Evander would suddenly leave her. Her phone rang. Serafina was so agitated. Her hands were shaking violently. She could barely even hold the phone. When she finally managed to grip it, desperately hoping it was Evander calling, her screen flashed Mrs. Sterling's name. Serafina's breath hitched. The massive emotional roller coaster made her dizzy, and her stomach started to cramp with dull, throbbing pain. She answered the call, and Mrs. Sterling's furious roar blasted through the speaker. "Dorian said you're pregnant, is it true? And when the hell did you two get a marriage certificate without telling us? Serafina, how could you be so stupid? Playing around is one thing, but getting pregnant with Dorian's child and wanting to marry him? What were you thinking? Did you find Evander?" Serafina had already screamed, her throat raw in the wind. After a long pause, she finally croaked out a soulless response. "Vander is gone." Mrs. Sterling's voice, full of bitter disappointment, echoed through the phone. "He has zero tolerance for betrayal. No wonder he refused to take the jade pendant from me, insisting on waiting until the wedding day. He must have found out about you and Dorian." Whatever Mrs. Sterling said next, Serafina didn't hear a word. In her mind, only one sentence echoed endlessly. "He found out about you and Dorian." Serafina suddenly remembered the warning Evander gave her on the day he agreed to be with her. "Serafina, I can only accept 100% unreserved love. If you ever stop loving me, let's part ways peacefully. But if you dare to betray me, I will make sure you never ever find me again." Mrs. Sterling's guess and Evander's past words looped in Serafina's brain like a broken record, torturing her to the point of madness. Evander left her because he discovered her betrayal. Forced to calm down and think deeply, Serafina finally realized that her affair with Dorian was riddled with glaring flaws. Evander had discovered her betrayal, which was why he had been acting increasingly strange lately. It was just that she had poured so much of her attention into Dorian. Even when she noticed the slight off vibes in Evander's mood, she brushed it off. Turns out the signs were always there. Yet she arrogantly believed she had everything perfectly under control. A dull, throbbing pain seized Serafina's chest. The crushing weight of guilt threatened to break her. But no matter what, she had to find Evander. Between them, until she said it was over, it wasn't truly over. Serafina forced herself to rally. She found Evander's number and called it. Unfortunately, time after time, it just rang out to an unanswered void. Serafina then opened her pinned chat with Evander on WeChat. The moment the message sent, a glaring red exclamation mark popped up. Evander had blocked every single one of her contact methods. Serafina stared at her phone helplessly, on the verge of a breakdown. Even if Evander left, where could he go? Evander's father had remarried and had a new child years ago, right after his mother died. Evander was even plotted against by that new wife. Since being rescued, the relationship between father and son had hit absolute sub-zero. Evander would never go to his father. Serafina went through hell and high water just to dig up the contact info of Evander's friends. But almost everyone who picked up the phone reacted with shocked disbelief. "Isn't today your wedding? Why on earth would he be at my place?" The newly sparked hope was instantly extinguished. Serafina felt like she was being swallowed by a black hole of despair, until she dialed Evander's best friend, Kaylin. Hearing Serafina's voice the second she stated her purpose, Kaylin let out a cold, mocking laugh. "Looking for Evander? Serafina, keep dreaming. A scumbag like you doesn't deserve to see him ever again, and you have absolutely no right to know where he went." Serafina didn't care about Kaylin's sarcasm. Hope flared in her chest again. She gripped her phone tight, speaking at a rapid-fire pace. "You know where Vander is, don't you? Tell me. I'll agree to any condition you have. I can give you money." Before she could finish, Kaylin practically spat through the phone. "Think your filthy money makes you God? Serafina, your money is useless here. Your repentance? Even a dog would shake its head at it." Serafina didn't even notice the call had been disconnected. She just kept pleading. "I really know I was wrong. I'm begging you, tell me, where is Vander?" When she finally realized he had hung up and tried to call back, she discovered she had been blocked once again. Serafina screamed like a lunatic, hammering her fists against the floor. Her knuckles split open, leaving a bloody mess on the tiles. But she kept punishing herself, as if she couldn't feel the pain at all. She didn't know how much time passed before the sound of a key turning in the lock echoed through the apartment. In just half a day, Serafina had already cycled through despair countless times. But she still couldn't stop herself from hoping the person walking through the door was Evander. When she saw it was Mrs. Sterling, the wave of despair crashed over her again. Her stiffened shoulders slumped instantly. Seeing how Serafina had tortured herself into this pathetic state in such a short time, Mrs. Sterling felt a mix of heartache and fury. "I warned you over and over to cut it off with Dorian, but you just wouldn't listen. And now look at you, torturing yourself like this." Serafina didn't know how to answer. Back then, she thought she could perfectly balance Evander and Dorian. But she forgot that walls have ears. She regretted it. She truly regretted it. She thought she had executed it flawlessly. Besides, she hadn't actually changed her heart. She was just playing around with Dorian for fun. She thought as long as she did that, there wouldn't be any problems. Mrs. Sterling kept nagging. Dorian broke his leg, and it's basically your fault. We can't just abandon him right now. Plus, he's the father of your baby. If Evander was determined enough to leave without a word, it means there's no room for negotiation. You got a certificate with Dorian, and you're pregnant with his child. Just stop looking for Evander. No! Serafina yelled, her emotions boiling over. She snatched the phone straight out of Mrs. Sterling's hand. I will never give up looking for him. He only blocked me. He definitely hasn't blocked you. The phone rang for a long time, but eventually someone picked up. Evander's voice came through. Hello? Serafina was so overwhelmed her entire body shook. The blood on her hands smeared across Mrs. Sterling's phone screen. Her hoarse voice trembled. Vander, it's me. The exact second her voice registered, the call was brutally terminated. A surge of blinding panic and rage seized Serafina's chest. She coughed violently twice, then suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood. She completely ignored a terrified Mrs. Sterling screaming beside her. Vander, how could you be so cruel? Serafina's shoulders shook as uncontrollable tears streamed down her face. After a long while, she forced herself to calm down. Feeling Evander's absolute merciless resolve, Serafina knew that calling again would only result in being hung up on or blocked. Obsessing over these useless tactics was pointless. Serafina recalled the call with Kaylin. Kaylin definitely knew where Evander went. Ignoring Mrs. Sterling's worried stares, she dialed her assistant. Assistant Zhao, send someone to tail Kaylin. Any news related to Vander must be brought to me immediately. Also, investigate every single flight and train leaving Cresthaven today. Tell me the second you find anything. Firing off orders one after another, Serafina refused to give herself a single second to breathe. Only by staying hyper-focused could she avoid drowning in her own misery. Mrs. Sterling hesitated several times, eventually trying to offer some pragmatic advice to get Serafina to let go. Sarah, the world is massive. If Evander is hell-bent on leaving, how are you ever going to find him? What happened at the wedding was witnessed by so many people. The rumors about you are already spreading like wildfire across Cresthaven. If this isn't handled right, it won't just ruin you. It'll drag down the entire Sterling Corporation. The best solution right now is for you and Dorian to step forward and clarify things, with a PR team backing you up. Serafina cut off whatever Mrs. Sterling was going to say next, snapping back with an undeniable tone. Mom, stop trying to convince me. No matter what, I have to find Vander. As long as he comes back, I'm willing to accept whatever he wants. But giving up on finding him? That's asking me to die. So, no matter what, even if she had to dig through hell or comb the heavens, she was going to find Evander Vance. With that, Serafina didn't even bother cleaning the blood off her hands and face before storming out and heading straight to the company. The scandalous rumors surrounding Serafina that she had previously suppressed were now spreading faster than ever, but she couldn't afford to care. The volume of daily flights and trains out of Cresthavens was staggeringly high. After Assistant Zhao painstakingly sorted through all the departure records from the day of the wedding, Serafina made a horrifying discovery. On that specific day, Evander had purchased tickets to over 10 different domestic cities and flights to 6 different foreign countries. Staring at the nearly 20 destination points on her desk, a bitter smile leaked from the corner of Serafina's mouth. Evander was absolutely determined to wipe his tracks off the map. But even knowing this, Serafina couldn't bring herself to genuinely give up. She began eliminating the false leads one by one. But doing this was like looking for a needle in the ocean. She plunged into despair once again. From the day of the wedding until now, 5 full days had passed. She had slept less than 5 hours total. The rest of the time was spent frantically investigating Evander's whereabouts, but she found absolutely nothing. On the 6th day, while giving instructions to Assistant Zhao, Serafina's exhausted body finally gave out, and she collapsed unconscious on the spot. She was out cold for a full day and night. When she finally woke up, she found herself lying in a hospital bed. She immediately ripped out her IV drip, preparing to leave. But the moment her feet hit the floor, someone blocked her path. Sarah, Mom said you haven't rested in days. Just stay and recover before leaving. Otherwise, my heart will ache for you, even if it's just for the sake of our babies. You can't keep being this stubborn. Only then did Serafina notice Dorian was actually in the VIP ward with her. His leg was in a cast, and his face was plastered with fake concern. Serafina's expression instantly froze into a block of ice. She violently slapped his hand away. Know your place. Who gave you the right to call her mom? Dorian's gaze dropped to Serafina's slightly swollen belly, his tone unable to hide his obnoxious glee. We got our certificate, and we have kids. Plus, so many people saw us hold a wedding. Mom has already accepted my status. Yesterday, she even sat down with me to pick out names for the twins. Do you want to hear which ones you like? The tiny thread of sanity holding Serafina's brain together instantly snapped. She lunged forward, her hands clamping around Dorian's throat like a vice, her fingers digging in with terrifying force. Dorian's face slowly morphed from pale white to flushed red to a bruised purple. He was so paralyzed by the lethal, dead-eyed stare Serafina was giving him that he forgot to struggle. A horrifying thought blossomed in his mind. Serafina is actually trying to kill me. Mrs. Sterling walked in, saw the scene, and let out a blood-curdling scream. That scream yanked some logic back into Serafina's brain. Her grip abruptly loosened. She looked down at Dorian, whose eyes were wide with sheer terror, and interrogated him word by word. On the day of the wedding, why were you the one who showed up? And how did you get Vander's wedding ring? These past few days, her mind had been entirely consumed with tracking Evander. She hadn't had the brain capacity to process the rest. But seeing Dorian again triggered all the unanswered questions. Dorian gasped greedily for air. Terrified out of his mind, he completely spilled his guts about everything that happened after Serafina left him on the wedding day. Not long after you left, I got a package. It was the wedding rings. As for the rest of it, it was the wedding planners who called me and told me to head to the venue. I just thought I was going to replace Evander and have the wedding with you, so I went. I didn't think too much about it. Having regained his freedom, Dorian scrambled and crawled, hiding himself behind Mrs. Sterling. Serafina immediately contacted the head of the wedding planning agency. Her eyes remained deadlocked onto Dorian. If I find out you're lying to me, I will absolutely end you. A few minutes later, Serafina learned that a full half a month before the wedding, Evander had already requested the planners to swap the groom. The dark cloud of confusion in Serafina's mind finally cleared, but the answer struck her heart like a physical blow. So, even that long ago, Evander was already prepping his escape. Serafina slumped to the floor, unable to comprehend how Evander could be so incredibly heartless. To just say he's leaving and vanish without a trace. All their years of love, in Evander's eyes, was it really worth absolutely nothing? But if she hadn't caved to Dorian's seduction and betrayed Evander first, Evander wouldn't have been so ruthless. Serafina viciously slapped her own face twice, but the crushing weight of regret didn't lighten a single ounce. The sudden shrill ring of her phone broke her spiral of self-blame. Assistant Zhao's voice buzzed through the speaker. We got news about Mr. Vance from Kalen's tale. A blinding ray of light exploded in Serafina's dead eyes. Spit it out. Our guy managed to snap a long-distance photo of Kalen's chat screen. Analyzing the background of the photos sent, Mr. Vance should currently be in Lhasa, Tibet. The next second, a highly zoomed-in pixelated image arrived on Serafina's phone. Despite the blurriness obscuring the face, Serafina instantly recognized the man as Evander. She stared at the photo like a starving fanatic. Book the fastest flight to Lhasa immediately. I'm going to find Vander. 3 hours later, Serafina boarded the flight. After a 5-hour journey, the plane touched down in Lhasa. Serafina marched straight to the location in the photo's background. After asking around, she finally traced the path to the guest house Evander had been staying at. But when she shoved the photo of Evander in the owner's face, she was informed that Evander had just checked out and left. Serafina stood frozen in place, a short, sharp ringing echoing in her ears. Nobody understood why Evander fled in such a hurry better than her. Evander definitely knew she was coming, so he bolted. Serafina stood inside the room Evander had occupied right before fleeing. The faint scent of him still lingered in the air. She found a tie clip Evander had accidentally left behind in the bathroom. She placed it in the pocket right over her heart, pressing her hand tightly against it. Inside that same pocket was a photo of Evander. Only by staring at that photo every day could Serafina find fleeting moments of peace. During Evander's absence, she had dug through her phone for all their old photos, printed them out, and plastered them on the walls exactly where they used to be. All their old couple items, clothes matching Evander's style, Serafina bought them all back, piece by piece. Only by doing this could she trick herself into believing Evander hadn't completely abandoned her. He just went on a long trip. Maybe one day he'd just walk through the door. Serafina tried the same tactic again, having Assistant Zhao investigate the train stations and airports in Lhasa. But this wasn't Cresthaven. Assistant Zhao almost got arrested as a security threat and found absolutely zero intel. I returned to Cresthaven. Accurately speaking, I returned to the city where Serafina once wanted to build a future with me. I knew she was back too, obviously. 2 days ago, she was tearing through Lhasa like a maniac looking for me, and now she had dragged herself back to Cresthaven covered in metaphorical dirt. I heard she was back to her old tricks, tailing Kalen, probing for my whereabouts, even digging up people I had cut ties with years ago, trying to play buddy-buddy with them. I just stood from a distance, watching her crash into anyone who had ever crossed paths with me, like a headless fly. At first, I just watched coldly from the sidelines, but later, the noise got louder. Some people even came up to me directly, asking if she and I were just having a lover's quarrel. They said Serafina had gone completely insane looking for me everywhere. I just coldly replied with one phrase, no comment. I had already given her all the chances I could possibly give, but it seemed she never understood human language. The less response she got, the harder she threw herself at the wall like a rabid dog. By the end, I was truly, utterly exhausted. I blocked her for so long. Did she really think I was just scared of her, afraid to face her? That day, I finally unblocked her. No greetings, no warnings. I just took everything I had stockpiled and dumped it all into the chat box. The photo of her and Dorian's marriage certificate, the one I fished out of her coat pocket, the spicy couple selfies and honeymoon logs hidden on her laptop, the ones I copied while she was in the shower, the provocative gloating texts Dorian personally sent me after she got pregnant, and those lovely bed photos. I didn't leave a single one out. I sent them all. My phone clicked like a machine gun firing off messages. With every text sent, I felt a fraction lighter. When the final message went through, I exhaled a massive breath. It felt like I had ripped 2 years' worth of suppression out by the roots and tossed it in the dumpster. Then, I turned off my phone and boarded my flight to Paris. After a 10-plus-hour flight, a full night, I slept more peacefully than I had in years. No nightmares, no memories. When I landed in Paris, I turned my phone on. The screen exploded with a sea of notifications. I wasn't surprised at all. Of course, it was all from Serafina. From missed calls to a wall of WeChat texts. I tapped into her chat and saw her very first message. I let out a cold laugh. "Vander, you finally reached out to me. You forgave me, right?" She didn't even look at what I sent before she eagerly started her self-indulgent, Oscar-worthy performance of being moved. What followed was an endless string of texts begging for forgiveness. She said she knew she was wrong. She said she was willing to spend the rest of her life atoning. She said as long as I came back, she'd drop everything else. I didn't reply to a single one. She wrote longer and longer essays, escalating from a few sentences to a 1,000-word confession. Too bad, I'm not her teacher, and I'm certainly not God. I never planned on giving her anything resembling forgiveness. I didn't send all that stuff to show her how hurt I was. I sent it to let her know that the Evander Vance who was willing to tolerate her and coddle her was dead. It wasn't about how deep she cut me. It was to say, I have completely thoroughly moved on. She didn't just betray our romance. She betrayed the absolute last shred of faith I had in her. I just wanted to tell her, I'm not crazy, I'm not stupid, and I'm not some oblivious idiot waiting to find out who you really love. I already know everything. And no matter what, I will never forgive you. And I hope Serafina Sterling never bothers me again. But Serafina clearly misinterpreted my meaning. Or rather, she purposely played dumb. She just kept begging for my forgiveness. Looking at those messages, I only felt irony. Back when I was fully devoted to her, she took it for granted, happily tangling herself up with Dorian. Maybe she knew there'd be consequences if she got caught, but she still drowned herself in Dorian's gentle embrace, unable to pull herself out. I even gave her a chance to confess everything. As long as she told me the truth, we could have parted ways peacefully. But she didn't. She treated me like an idiot, keeping me entirely in the dark. Rewind to 10 hours ago. When Serafina received Evander's text, she almost thought she was hallucinating. She stared at the message, frozen for over a minute, before violently realizing she wasn't dreaming. She didn't even have time to open whatever Evander sent her. Her heart was bursting with the hopeful delusion that Evander had forgiven her, hence the proactive message. But after sending several replies into a black hole with no response, Serafina slowly snapped out of her initial joy. Panic began to claim her heart. She held her phone, waiting for an hour, 2 hours, from sunrise to sunset. Still not a single reply from Evander. The phone slipped from her stiff hands, crashing onto the floor. The screen shattered into a spiderweb. She picked it up, and only then did she scroll up to see what Evander had actually sent. When she saw those files, Serafina's breath caught in her throat. An unspeakable agony surged in her chest. And then that agony twisted into a raging inferno of fury. Ever since the day Evander caught her, and Dorian leaving the Obi-Wan clinic, Dorian had been forcefully shoving their secret affair right into Evander's face. Looking at how the things she did for Dorian were weaponized as daggers to stab Evander, Serafina's heart hurt so much she couldn't breathe. Only now did she see it clearly. She had actually done so many devastating things to Evander. She couldn't even fathom how Evander, knowing all of this, managed to force himself to endure her presence for that final half-month. If the roles were reversed, if Evander had done these things with another woman, Serafina felt she would have gone absolutely insane. Back then, she loved Evander so much. Why on earth did it come to this? Realizing something, Serafina's gaze turned lethally cold. If Dorian hadn't deliberately approached her, she wouldn't have done all those things to hurt Evander. Now Evander was gone. What right did Dorian, the root cause of all this misery, have to sit back and comfortably enjoy the fruits of this disaster? "Vander, I will make it up to you. Whoever made you unhappy, I won't let them off," Serafina muttered to herself like a psychopath. She stormed out of the house and drove straight to the villa Dorian was staying in. During this period, she had been entirely consumed with finding Evander. She had tossed Dorian completely to the back of her mind. She had driven this route countless times. On countless nights before Evander left her, she would sneak out after he fell asleep to find Dorian. But not a single one of those trips was filled with the bone-deep agony she felt right now. If she had known this would be the outcome, she would never have betrayed Evander. But thinking about that now couldn't change the absolute fact that Evander had left. All she could do was vent her rage on his behalf. Half an hour later, Serafina arrived outside the villa, flanked by several bodyguards. The lights inside were still on. She rang the bell and the nanny quickly answered the door. "Mr. Dorian is currently taking a shower." Before the nanny could finish, Serafina barged right in. As she reached the second-floor landing, Dorian stepped out, wrapped in a towel, having heard the commotion. Seeing it was Serafina, sheer delight exploded in his eyes. He purposely loosened the towel, letting it slip lower to show off more of his abs and those faint V-lines. "Sarah, why are you here so late?" Dorian confidently stepped forward and grabbed her hand, tracing circles on her palm with his thumb. Looking down at their intertwined hands, Serafina remembered the countless times she failed to resist the temptation and slept with him. She felt an overwhelming urge to tear him to shreds on the spot. Just like Mrs. Sterling had said, Dorian's cheap, low-rent seduction tricks were completely transparent. But back then, the increasingly mundane stability of her relationship with Evander made her crave a little thrill. So, under Dorian's seduction, she pretended to waver and slept with him. The first time she felt guilty. She didn't know how to face Evander. But Evander trusted her far too much. And so it happened again and again, until she completely drowned in it. She even got pregnant with his child. Serafina's eyes turned sharp and icy. She had zero desire to flirt. She glared at him, a block of ice. Dorian, I warned you not to expose our relationship to Vander. The smug joy on Dorian's face instantly fossilized. The raw panic that bled into his eyes looked especially clownish and pathetic to Serafina. Even though it was the middle of summer, goosebumps erupted all over Dorian's body. He had already personally experienced exactly how unhinged Serafina could get for Evander Vance twice now. That kind of terror, he didn't want a round 3. Plus, as a charity case sponsored by the Sterling family, how the hell was he supposed to win a fight against Serafina? Dorian desperately tried to plaster on a look of total innocence. He couldn't let Serafina know he had sent those texts to Evander. Thank God he had already deleted the chat history. He tried to stop his body from trembling, keeping his tone even. Sarah, what are you talking about? I never contacted Evander. He must have heard about us from someone else. Serafina snatched his wrist in a vice grip and yanked his phone away. She opened WeChat. Forget about finding the provocative messages she had already seen on Evander's end. Evander wasn't even on Dorian's contact list. Dorian feigned calm as he took the phone back, though his voice betrayed him with a violent tremor. See, I told you. How could I? Shut up. Serafina coldly cut off his pathetic defense, ordering the bodyguards to restrain him. Dorian, did you really think I'd buy your garbage excuses? If I didn't have proof, why would I come knocking on your door at this hour? Serafina shoved the chat records Evander had forwarded her straight into Dorian's face. Dorian's complexion instantly turned dead white. The bodyguards hoisted him up by his arms. His toes barely scraped the floor. Right behind him was the staircase. If the bodyguards listened to Serafina and let go, he would tumble all the way down. Dorian panicked, begging for mercy. Sarah, let me stand up first. I didn't mean to say those things. I was just jealous of Evander. I didn't want to see you marry someone else, but it's all because I love you too much. Forgive me this one time, please. With his one free hand, Dorian gripped the bodyguard's wrist in a death grip, terrified that Serafina would ruthlessly order them to drop him. Serafina's gaze didn't soften an inch. She looked at the groveling Dorian like she was looking at a corpse. Wasn't it enough to just quietly enjoy what you gained? But you had to be so greedy. You tried to force Vander out so you could take his place. So you are destined to get nothing. Under Dorian's horrified stare, Serafina raised her hand. She placed it over the hand Dorian used to cling to the bodyguard. Finger by finger, she pried his grip loose. Vander is gone. What right do you have to enjoy any of this? Dorian was so terrified his lips were vibrating. The nanny who had answered the door had already lost her mind with fear watching this. Dorian noticed her and screamed, "Call Mrs. Sterling! Quickly, Serafina, don't forget you're carrying my babies, and my status was officially recognized by your parents. You can't do this to me!" His threats were completely useless. His fingers were peeled off one by one. With a violent shove, Serafina pushed him outward. She watched with cold, dead eyes as Dorian tumbled backward down the stairs. To Dorian, that 30-second fall felt like an eternity in hell. When he finally hit the bottom, his already healing broken leg was shattered even worse. Blood poured freely from a gash on his head. He looked up and saw Serafina standing at the top of the stairs, utterly detached. There wasn't a single shred of pity in her eyes. The last remaining scrap of sanity in Dorian's brain was instantly vaporized by sheer hatred. "Serafina, you are an absolute coward. Evander leaves, so you dump all the blame on me. But what did I do wrong? Long before I sent him those texts, he already knew you were a cheating tramp. At the end of the day, it was you who couldn't keep your legs closed, claiming you loved Evander more than your own life? Your so-called love is a massive joke. No wonder he swapped me in as the groom even when he bailed. He did it just to humiliate you. If you love him so much, why don't you go grovel to his face?" Dorian soon passed out from blood loss. Serafina remained icy and unbothered, feeling zero sympathy. The only crack in her facade was a fleeting flash of humiliation when Dorian brutally exposed the ugliest truth in her heart. She already knew from the text Evander sent that he had discovered her infidelity long before Dorian's provocations. But it was her mistake. She intended to apologize to Evander's face. Dorian, the instigator, had no right to wash his hands of the blame. The nanny, shaking like a leaf, finally made the call. Soon, Mrs. Sterling and an ambulance arrived at the villa one after another. Mr. Sterling came with them. Seeing the floor slick with blood, he was so enraged he slapped Serafina squarely across the face. "You absolute disgrace. Hasn't there been enough humiliation surrounding you lately? Are you trying to kill Dorian now?" Half of Serafina's face instantly swelled up. But she didn't regret what she did for a single second. What right does he have to steal Vander's spot? This is the punishment his greed deserves. She only wanted the children she planned to have with Evander. No one else had the right. So she was going to abort the babies as her ultimate act of repentance. Seeing her obstinate, unrepentant attitude, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling saw black, almost fainting on the spot. Ultimately, Serafina was dragged to the hospital by Mrs. Sterling. Before leaving, Mrs. Sterling issued a lethal warning to the nanny who witnessed the whole thing. ordering her to keep her mouth permanently shut. But this villa district was populated by the wealthiest, most powerful people in Cresthaven. It was impossible to guarantee that tonight's spectacle hadn't been noticed by someone with ulterior motives. Plus, they still had the massive headache of Dorian to deal with. If any single part of this blew up, it would deliver a catastrophic, fatal blow to the already fragile Sterling Corporation. When Dorian finally woke up, he had a complete meltdown, screaming that he was going to call the cops. Mrs. Sterling spent a massive amount of time talking him down. Serafina couldn't be bothered to deal with the headache. She stayed at the hospital for less than half an hour before bouncing. As for whether Mrs. Sterling used threats or bribes on Dorian, she didn't care. If her parents knew what she was about to do, they would definitely stop her. So after leaving that hospital, Serafina went straight to another one. She booked an abortion. After the surgery drained of all color, Serafina dragged her ghostly body back home. Right now, she only wanted to find Evander as fast as humanly possible. She wanted to confess everything to his face and tell him how desperately she missed him. Serafina returned to that cold, empty apartment again. The place had long been restored to look exactly as it did before Evander left, but it lacked the actual breath of his existence. Moving like a zombie, she cooked 2 bowls of noodles and placed them exactly where they sat on the night before he vanished. Then, she pulled out a bottle of liquor and sat down across the table. "Vander, I made your favorite noodles. I taught Dorian a lesson today. The babies are gone too. But, when are you going to forgive me? When are you coming back to me?" Acting like a woman with deadened nerves, Serafina chugged bottle after bottle of liquor, totally ignoring the damage she was doing to her freshly operated body. She tried to use the alcohol to paralyze herself. Maybe then, she wouldn't feel the agonizing pain. She pulled out her shattered phone, tapping into her chat with Evander. She stared blankly at the messages they used to send each other. If only nothing had changed, how wonderful would that be? As she read, she stumbled back onto the files Evander had sent her. Many of them were intimate photos of her and Dorian. When Evander saw these back then, exactly how utterly crushed was he? Serafina's breath caught. She violently clutched her chest, struggling for air. Ever since Evander left, aside from the time she passed out, she hadn't had a single peaceful night's sleep. Even though the house was set up like he never left, it was all fake. When Serafina woke up in a groggy haze, it was already dusk the next day. The 2 bowls of noodles on the table had long congealed into a mushy lump. Empty liquor bottles littered the floor. It was the peak of summer. The smell of day-old noodles fermenting with heavy alcohol was aggressively foul. But Serafina sat there like a corpse, blending perfectly into the repulsive environment. Like a walking zombie, she existed day after day. She still hadn't received a single whisper of news regarding Evander. Whatever Mrs. Sterling promised, Dorian seemed to work, because he stopped screaming about calling the cops. But in Cresthaven, Serafina and the Sterling family's reputation had plummeted into the gutter. Unable to watch Serafina rot away, Mrs. Sterling eventually brought in a psychiatrist. But Serafina completely refused to cooperate, rendering the treatment utterly useless. The Serafina who used to heavily restrict her smoking and drinking had, in the mere month since Evander's departure, developed a severe addiction to both. She tried to use this method to numb herself, to force herself to forget, but only she knew how useless it was. She just couldn't think of any better alternative. "Vander, didn't you hate it when I smoked and drank? Why aren't you showing up to stop me? I miss you so much. Please, come back." Serafina continuously poured alcohol down her throat. Due to severe alcohol poisoning and extreme sleep deprivation, she felt like she was genuinely starting to hallucinate. Otherwise, why would Evander suddenly appear right in front of her? The figure walked closer, stopping about 3 steps away. Evander frowned at her. "Sarah, why did you drink so much? If you keep doing this, I'm going to ignore you." Serafina's deadpan expression shattered instantly. Her stagnant, dead-water eyes suddenly sparked back to life. She reached out, grabbed the Evander standing in front of her, and yanked him into a desperate hug. Her arms tightened like a python. Tears soaked the fabric of Evander's shirt. She was terrified that hugging him too tight would make him uncomfortable, but terrified that hugging him too loosely would cause him to vanish, just like in her countless dreams. Finally, she locked him firmly in her embrace, treating him like a lost and found treasure. "Vander, it's really you, right? I've been looking everywhere for you. You finally came back to me." Evander gently rubbed her back, coaxing her. "You're very tired right now. Let's go rest for a bit, okay? I won't leave." Serafina obediently stood up, but absolutely refused to let go of him. She dragged Evander straight into the bedroom. Serafina felt like she was experiencing the ultimate beautiful dream. But if Evander was willing to return to her, so what if it was a dream? Just let her never wake up. Serafina lay on the bed, clutching Evander tightly, terrified he'd suddenly evaporate. Evander shifted uncomfortably against her. Driven by desperation, Serafina began frantically caressing Evander's body. Just as things were about to cross the final line, Serafina's chaotic mind suddenly snapped awake. Seeing clearly that the man pinning her down was a total stranger, Serafina's head split with blinding pain. She delivered a vicious slap to his face. "Who the hell are you? Where's Vander? What did you do to my Vander? He was literally just here." Fueled by alcohol, Serafina had zero concept of how much force she was packing. The man was slapped so hard he flared with rage, forcefully shoving her off. The man wasn't Evander at all. It was Evander's half-brother, Rowan Vance. Mrs. Sterling simply couldn't stand watching Serafina lose her soul over Evander, degrading into a ghost of her former self. She had exhausted every option to no avail. Suddenly, she remembered Evander had a younger brother, 3 years his junior. Back when Mr. Vance remarried, he had actually been having an affair and birthed an illegitimate child long before. Rowan. After obtaining a photo, Mrs. Sterling noted Rowan shared about a 50% resemblance with Evander. She made a swift decision. She promised the Vance family massive benefits. The condition: Rowan had to approach Serafina and heal her romantic trauma, but the plan gloriously backfired. Rowan stared at the bleeding gash on Serafina's head. When he shoved her earlier, she had accidentally smashed her head. He tried to bolt but was yanked back by an iron grip. Serafina wasn't an idiot. Sobering up and staring at this guy who looked 50% like Evander, it only took a second to connect the dots. "You're Vander's brother, aren't you? Call him! I don't care what excuse you use, as long as you get him to come back, I will help you get whatever you want." Hearing this, Rowan rolled his eyes in exasperation. "A guy with no parents to care about him. What's so great about him that you're this obsessed?" The moment the words left his mouth, he felt Serafina's venomous, dead-eyed glare locking onto him. She issued a slow, lethal warning. "I forbid anyone from insulting Vander. If I hear one more word, I will kill you." Under Serafina's death threat, Rowan reluctantly dialed Evander's number. It rang for a bit before connecting. The voice on the other end was dripping with the irritation of being woken up. "Brother, it's Rowan. Dad is gravely ill. He wants you to come back and see him." I froze for a solid minute, rummaging through the dusty archives of my brain just to remember who the hell Rowan was. We hadn't contacted each other in so long. I practically forgot I had a half-brother, let alone that so-called father. I had severed ties with the Vance family ages ago. I said flatly, "Whether he lives or dies has nothing to do with me. Don't bother notifying me." Even though I couldn't see Rowan's face, the sudden drop of his concerned brother act told me everything. "No wonder Dad didn't want you. Evander, you really are a miserable prick. Serves you right getting tossed out by Dad, and then tossed out by the Sterling family." That single sentence snapped me entirely out of my half-asleep daze. My voice dropped to the temperature of a razor blade. "Did Serafina tell you to call?" It was phrased as a question, but I already knew the answer. Rowan let out a cold snort. "So what if she did?" "Evander, I just can't stand the sight of you." I hung up instantly. I wasn't giving him another second of my time. Meanwhile, on their end, Serafina, shivering from blood loss, only managed to whisper one microscopic weak sentence before the call disconnected. "Vander, I never wanted to throw you away." After the call ended, Serafina passed out from severe blood loss. Rowan, originally planning to slip away, was terrified of catching a murder charge, so he ultimately called Mrs. Sterling. This managed to save Serafina's life. Currently in the hospital room, Serafina was still unconscious. She had been out cold for 2 straight days. Mrs. Sterling's anxiety spiked higher with every passing minute. "Vander!" Just as Mrs. Sterling thought Serafina was finally waking up, the doctor confirmed it was merely a subconscious reflex. Evander's departure had become an incurable terminal illness in Serafina's heart. Looking at the emaciated, skeletal shell that was once Serafina, Mrs. Sterling broke down, sobbing uncontrollably over the bed. Mrs. Sterling's call, I only picked it up after hanging up on it 3 times. The ringtone kept looping, sounding exceptionally piercing in the quiet Parisian morning. I actually knew exactly why she was calling. Who else could be about but Serafina? When the caller ID flashed for the 7th time, I stared at the screen, hesitated for 2 seconds, and finally swiped to answer. "Vander, Auntie really has no other options. Please don't hang up." Her voice was choked and raspy. I could tell she was genuinely crying. I stayed silent for a few seconds, forcing my tone to remain level. "Mrs. Sterling, what is it?" I refused to call her auntie anymore. Too intimate a title would only remind me of how incredibly well she treated me, and how she personally shoved me into the abyss. She didn't beat around the bush. "Sarah has been looking for you this whole time. She made a mistake, I know, but she truly regrets it. Vander, can you please give her one more chance? Even if it's just to see her one last time?" I looked out at the morning streets of Paris. The wind blew, chilling my fingertips. It had been nearly 3 months since I left Cresthaven. In those 3 months, I hopped around a few places, but ultimately settled here. Kaylin had fed me quite a bit of intel. Serafina hadn't stopped looking for me. Her methods were getting more and more unhinged. So unhinged, in fact, that I didn't even dare post on social media, terrified she'd sniff out my IP. Honestly, I knew running wasn't a permanent solution. It was time to put a definitive end to this grudge. So I spoke. "I'll be returning to Cresthaven in a week. I'll contact you then." With that, I hung up. I didn't wait for her response. This tiny sliver of leeway I just handed over was enough to make Serafina absolutely lose her mind. I could vividly picture her hyperventilating with joy when she got the news. I could picture her arrogantly assuming I had forgiven her. But what she didn't know was, I wasn't going back to give her a chance. I was going back to give myself a formal final closure, an ending, a permanent termination. Mrs. Sterling called, saying Serafina had woken up. She said Serafina's very first words were demanding to see me. I remained silent for a moment, ultimately agreeing to take the trip back to Cresthaven. She gave me a meeting location, a greenhouse conservatory in the suburbs. Honestly, just hearing the address, I knew this was another one of Serafina's theatrical setups. But I didn't complain. I packed my bags, hung up, and headed out on schedule. The second I stepped into the greenhouse, I paused. It was midsummer, yet the entire place was flooded with blooming pear blossoms. The floor was carpeted in a thick layer of white petals. The air was thick with a faint sweet fragrance. Every step was picturesque, like stumbling into a fairy tale. Obviously, I knew exactly why she did this. She couldn't let go of the year we got together, when the pear blossoms were at their peak. She was using all this to try and resurrect my old heartbeat, but I was no longer that Evander Vance. I didn't waste a single extra second admiring her little stage play. I looked straight at Serafina in the distance. She walked toward me, her frame so skeletal it looked like the suit jacket would slide right off her. I was stunned for a microsecond. 3 months apart, and she had genuinely mutated, haggard, ghostly pale, eyes swollen red. She looked like her soul had been vacuumed out, leaving nothing but an empty husk. But inside my chest, not a single drop of pity stirred. She called my name. Vander. I stopped walking, keeping a strict 3-meter distance. I refused to step an inch closer. If you have something to say it fast. I stared at her, my voice deadpan and distant. But after today, I expect you to permanently exit my life. A wounded look flashed across her eyes, as if my words had smacked her upside the head. But I didn't soften. She took a deep breath, looking up at me, trying to force a pathetic smile. Vander, I think about you every single second. I know you hate me. You hate that I betrayed you, but I really truly changed. You don't like Dorian? I completely cut him off. The babies are gone too. I custom-ordered new rings. I even planted pear trees. I want to propose to you all over again. Vander, let's start over, please? Her eyes were practically glowing with a desperate, pathetic pleading. I promise you from now on I will never ever betray you again. If I fail, I'll die alone. She spoke with such sincerity, so pitiful. She almost sounded like she meant it. But I only felt the irony, the massive, glaring irony. I looked at her, my tone as clinical as stating a scientific fact. Serafina, if I hadn't suddenly disappeared, would you have proactively severed ties with Dorian? You are the most important person to me. When she spat that out without a second's hesitation, I should have felt a tiny bit touched. Instead, I just found it hilarious. The corners of my mouth involuntarily hooked into a sneer. Even I felt the sarcasm dripping off it. Her eyes shifted instantly, seemingly stung by my mocking smile. You wouldn't have. I looked down at her, ruthlessly shattering her self-indulgent delusion. You couldn't bear to let me go, but you were also addicted to the cheap thrill Dorian gave you. If you were truly capable of letting it go, how on earth did you get knocked up with his kids? And then turn around and try to trick me into thinking they were mine. When I said that, I saw her body flinch violently, but I didn't stop. The only reason you're claiming you'll let it go now is because you realize I'm never coming back. Your biggest regret isn't doing the crime. It's failing to hide the evidence better. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. If you had a time machine, I bet my life you would just hide Dorian further away. Hide him so well I'd never find him. That way, you get to have your cake and eat it too. Keep lying. Keep acting. Her face instantly drained of all color. I knew I had struck the deepest, ugliest, most unacknowledged corner of her soul. Her lips trembled, unable to form a single syllable. After a long pause, she rasped out, Vander, you can't sentence me based on a hypothetical that never happened. She was still shaking her head, denying, arguing, but my patience had officially expired. Maybe I guessed wrong, I sneered. But the fact that you already betrayed me is a permanent stain. Serafina, what gives you the delusion that after doing so many sickening things, I would just wipe the slate clean and forgive you like the old days? She could barely stand. Her face was ghastly. The ring box in her hand hit the floor with a sharp clack rolling to my feet. I glanced at it. I didn't pick it up. She stared at me, eyes burning with resentment. Then why did you even come back? Aren't you afraid? She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew exactly what she meant. She thought I'd be afraid she'd use her power to illegally imprison me here. She definitely had the capability. In this city, her word was law. And honestly, I probably shouldn't have come back. But I did, because I figured it out. If you don't face the ghost, it will haunt you forever. I looked at her, my voice colder than a glacier. Serafina, you know the legal definition of unlawful imprisonment better than I do. You don't want to add that charge to your resume, do you? I came back purely to cut the cord. Your psychotic stalking is severely impacting my life. I said my piece, turned, and walked away. I only made it a few steps before she violently grabbed my wrist from behind. She didn't say a word, but I knew that look too well. Begging, grieving, and a petty, stubborn refusal to accept defeat. She was begging me not to be so absolute, but my charity quota for her was officially bankrupt. Before I could even rip my hand away, a voice called out from the greenhouse entrance, Babe, what took you so long? It was Alara. I didn't even see how she got close, but I suddenly felt her naturally link her arm with mine. Serafina froze. She stared blankly at me, then at Alara. Our hands were tightly clasped together. Her voice trembled. Who are you? Hi, I'm Evander's girlfriend, Alara. Alara smiled, radiant and flawlessly poised. If you ever get the chance, you're welcome to visit us in Paris. I said nothing. I just walked out side by side with Alara. The barricade behind me had vanished, but just a few steps out, I heard a heavy thud, followed by the sickening sound of someone violently coughing up blood. I didn't look back. I just gently closed my eyes for a second. This was the ending she chose for herself. I was just finally done paying the toll for her mistakes. As Alara and I were getting ready to leave the greenhouse, Mrs. Sterling suddenly ambushed us. She stood ramrod straight, physically blocking our path. Her complex gaze scanned me, then darted to Alara. Vander, you're leaving just like that? Who is this friend of yours? I squashed the annoyance in my chest and replied evenly, there's nothing left to say between Serafina and me. Also, this is my girlfriend, Alara. Alara politely nodded her greeting, her voice soft. Hello, Mrs. Sterling. But Mrs. Sterling clearly wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. Her eyes locked onto our intertwined hands, her tone spiking into an interrogation. Vander, you and Sarah have been broken up for less than 3 months. How could you? She didn't finish, but the translation was obvious. Can't you see how much she suffered for you? She got an abortion for you. She destroyed her own body. Since you were willing to come back to see her, why couldn't you just give her one more chance? Listening to her spit out every single word, the exhaustion piled up in my soul. I understood Mrs. Sterling's stance. I understood her heartbreak for her daughter. But the more she acted like this, the clearer my head got. Mrs. Sterling, I looked at her, my voice low but hard as steel. Serafina's suffering has absolutely zero to do with me. The babies in her stomach weren't mine. She had total freedom to keep them. Every single drop of her misery is 100% self-inflicted. I paused, then continued. I agreed to come back and see her once, entirely out of respect for how well you treated me in the past. But that does not mean I owe her a damn thing. Serafina can cheat on me right before our wedding, yet I'm supposed to ask for your permission to date someone new after we broke up? Who gave her that right? And one more thing. I stared at her, my eyes dimming. Mrs. Sterling, you knew she was cheating long before I did, yet you chose to cover for her. I'm not going to judge your choice back then, or preach about right and wrong, but you have absolutely zero right to demand my forgiveness. Mrs. Sterling's face turned violently ugly. I wasn't purposely trying to trigger her, but I had swallowed these words for far too long. Right then, I saw Serafina stumbling out from the back, face like a ghost, weakly leaning against the walls. Sterling instantly spun around and sprinted toward her, screaming her name in a panic. I didn't stick around to watch the soap opera. I turned my head, grabbed Alara's hand, and walked away from that place that would never belong to me again. This time, I was truly gone. Evander Vance and Serafina Sterling. No ties, no sequels. During my brief return to Cresthaven, I took Alara sightseeing. It was her first time in this city, the city where I once delusionally thought I'd spend my entire life. I took her to eat at the beef noodle joint I frequented as a kid. We went to the river to catch the breeze. I also introduced her to Kalen. We made a pact. Whenever he's in a good mood, he's flying to Paris to hang with us. Then, Alara and I left Cresthaven together. The moment the plane touched down in Paris, I let out a massive sigh of relief. A genuine soul-cleansing sigh of relief. I met Alara during my very first trip to Paris. That day, I had just landed, physically and mentally drained. I was following a shady broker to look at apartments and almost got scammed. Alara stepped in, bailed me out, and hooked me up with a secure rental through a friend. After that, we casually grabbed food, chatted, and slowly got to know each other. She said I was very quiet, that I reminded her of a manga protagonist she had a crush on as a kid. I just laughed at the time, didn't say much. Until later when she looked me dead in the eye and told me she liked me. I didn't reject her. I wasn't acting on impulse, and I wasn't looking for a rebound. I knew with absolute clarity, I didn't love Serafina anymore. From the moment I sat alone in the wedding planning office, staring at her marriage certificate with another man, my love for her had permanently expired. If someone thinks I'm too cold-blooded for getting into a new relationship less than 3 months after a breakup, fine, I'm not going to explain myself. Like Alara once said, running away just lets the problem torture you on loop. You only truly let it go when you face it head on. I stopped running, and I also stopped believing in the I can't live without you fairy tale. People change. Hearts mutate. Back then, I believed in Serafina's sincerity. Today, I'm willing to believe in Alara's. If my romance with Serafina was a moth flying into a bonfire, then my time with Alara is like a quiet spring rain. Silent, warm, no drama, no chaos, just seeping peacefully into the soil of my heart. And that is more than enough. After returning to Paris from Cresthaven, my life finally recalibrated to zero stress mode. No more calls from Serafina. No more mutual friends who were obviously her spies, texting me to play peacemaker. My WeChat wasn't suffocating under a mountain of unread trauma-dumping essays. Even my dreams were crystal clear. Every day I wake up on time, work, eat with Alara, occasionally go for a stroll or hit up an art exhibit. Life is simple and clean. This is exactly the life I wanted. As for the Serafina cinematic universe, I permanently slammed that door shut, no looking back. But I knew she wouldn't truly surrender. According to Kalen's exclusive behind-the-scenes gossip, after I left, Serafina's condition nosedived. She looked like she had lost her soul, numb, emaciated, chronically depressed. She completely stopped attending public events and refused to handle company business. She effectively downgraded herself into a soulless zombie. I heard Mrs. Sterling became highly explosive because of it. That formerly elegant, impeccably poised, high society lady had apparently transformed into a completely different species, cursing the heavens, cursing the earth, cursing Evander Vance for being ungrateful, cursing Dorian for being cheap trash, but mostly cursing Serafina for being useless. And Mr. Sterling? He was finally pushed to the absolute edge of his sanity. That day, Kalen sent me an audio recording. It was just a snippet, but I immediately recognized the sound of Mr. Sterling kicking the hospital door open. "Serafina, look at the absolute state of yourself!" I heard his furious roar, followed by the sharp, echoing crack of a heavy slap. I wasn't shocked. Mr. Sterling was a borderline control freak. obsessively strict about family discipline and reputation. Serafina's current pathetic aesthetic had undoubtedly triggered his ultimate bottom line. Do you honestly think pulling this stunt will make Evander look back at you? Right now, you aren't even worthy of a second glance from him. Do you have any idea how many people out there are treating us like a circus act? Mr. Sterling bellowed. His voice echoed through the hospital ward, vibrating through the audio file and stabbing into my eardrums, chilling me to the bone. Look at your mother. Look at what she's reduced herself to because of you. Have you completely forgotten what she used to look like? She doesn't even wear makeup anymore. She doesn't even bother brushing her hair. The entire city of Cresthaven knows the Sterling family has become a laughingstock. I didn't click play on the rest of the recording. Couldn't bear to listen. Didn't want to listen. I'm not a saint. I don't have an infinite reservoir of sympathy to dole out to people who actively orchestrated my destruction. Whatever suffering Serafina was experiencing right now didn't even amount to 1/1000th of what I went through back then. I won't lie. Hearing that her hair turned white overnight and she got slapped across the face by her dad, my heart did sink a fraction of an inch. But that was strictly from a baseline human empathy standpoint. It wasn't a soft spot, it wasn't pity, and it absolutely wasn't love. What truly chilled my blood was the fact that all of this was 100% her own premium selection. She made those choices while fully conscious. She weighed the pros and cons and decided to proceed with the betrayal. She had countless off-ramps, but she slammed the gas pedal instead. The exact millisecond she betrayed me, she bet her entire life savings and lost. So, she has no right to hate me for being merciless, and she absolutely shouldn't expect me to turn the car around. I am not the eternal backup tire in her little romance novel. Rumor has it Serafina eventually cooperated with treatment. Once her body somewhat recovered, she went back to the company. Her business acumen, I can't deny it. She's a monster in the boardroom. If she wasn't such a massive threat, those rival families wouldn't have tried to gang up and cannibalize her while she was at her lowest. Upon her return, she launched a bloodbath. She ruthlessly bit back at every single elite family that took a shot at her. Several corporations declared bankruptcy, losing their absolute shirts. In the end, those people had to bow their heads, bringing apologies and massive piles of cash just to beg her to stop. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling could probably finally lift their faces up in public again. I don't know if there was a brief moment where they mistakenly thought Serafina had moved on, but when they tried to set up blind dates for her and she explosively derailed all of them, they probably realized the truth. She just compressed her trauma into a zip file and shoved it to the back of her brain. She ignored everyone. Aside from work, she basically terminated her social life. After work, she would go home and lie in the exact bed I used to sleep in. She once said, if she ever betrayed me, she would die alone. Looks like she kept her promise. The Sterling Corporation's expansion eventually hit international waters. Their first stop, Paris. When someone brought it up to me, I genuinely didn't care. Until I accidentally wandered into a newly opened Chinese restaurant and ordered a bowl of noodles. That flavor, it was a pixel-perfect match. I knew instantly, it was her. I didn't march into the kitchen to dramatically confront her. I just kept my head down, finished the bowl, and walked out. She must have seen me later, because I never went back to that restaurant. She never came looking for me. I knew she was definitely lurking somewhere nearby, but she never crossed the line to appear in front of me. I walked past that area a few times. Occasionally, from a distance, I'd spot her crouching by the flower bed outside the restaurant, stiffly pruning the branches of a pear tree. Yeah, she planted a whole row of snow pear trees, my favorite. She knew my throat got scratchy in the autumn, so she had someone harvest a few pears and deliver them to my apartment. I had the guy return them, untouched. Later, the delivery guy came back and told me she heard the news that I was getting married. Even later, she actually showed up at the absolute back of the crowd at my wedding. I could sense it. Right as we finished our vows, I heard a suppressed, muffled sob coming from a dark corner in the back. I didn't turn around, I knew, it was her. Years slipped by. One day, while I was pushing a heavily pregnant Alara for a stroll, we passed by that restaurant again. She was still there, sitting in the courtyard, a ghostly pale silhouette, leaning against a pear tree, staring into the void. She didn't come over to say hi. I didn't turn my head to look. I knew she could never have biological children again. I heard she adopted a kid back in China. Supposedly, the kid looks a little bit like me. I also heard she constantly commutes between Cresthaven and Paris, her health deteriorating every single year. But she's still alive, still guarding that courtyard, guarding that row of pear trees, guarding that restaurant. Sometimes I wonder, if she hadn't done all those things back then, would we still be together today? But that's all it is, a passing thought. Because that version of her was permanently deleted on the night before our wedding, and the current me has already rebooted into a brand new future that belongs entirely to me. She will never, ever belong in my world again.